let's begin." The sun had barely begun its ascent, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban street. Inside a modest two-story home, John Harper stood frozen in the doorway of their bedroom, his heart pounding as he watched his wife, Claire, pack for what she claimed was a routine business trip. The scene before him felt surreal. Claire's every movement seemed deliberate, almost rehearsed, her auburn hair catching the soft morning light like a halo. For 10 years, John had admired her beauty, but today, it felt like a cruel mirage. Something about the way she folded her clothes with precision, the faint tremor in her hands as she tucked away lingerie he'd gifted her just weeks ago, gnawed at him. "Are you sure you've got everything?" John asked, his voice steady despite the unease clawing at his chest. He leaned against the doorframe, trying to mask his growing suspicion with a casual smile. Claire paused mid-motion, glancing up at him with an expression that didn't quite meet her eyes. "I think so," she replied, her tone light but edged with something John couldn't place. Nervousness? Defiance? 5 days in Chicago. I want to be prepared. Her words were calm, but her actions betrayed her. She carefully arranged items in her suitcase, each fold more meticulous than the last, as if she were preparing for something far beyond a professional conference. John's gaze lingered on her reflection in the mirror. She had spent extra time on her appearance this morning, applying makeup with care usually reserved for date nights rather than work trips. Her hair, styled in loose waves instead of her usual messy bun, framed her face in a way that made her look younger, almost radiant. And then there was the perfume, a blend of jasmine and vanilla that clung to the air, stirring memories of intimate moments they had shared. It wasn't until she spritzed herself one last time that John felt the first crack in his composure. The scent was intoxicating, yes, but it also carried a weight he couldn't ignore. As Claire zipped up her suitcase, John forced himself to speak again, though his throat felt tight. "You're going all out for this conference. Must be some important people there." His attempt at humor fell flat, and Claire's smile faltered slightly. She didn't meet his eyes when she responded. "Just want to make a good impression, that's all." But her tone held a layer of defensiveness that sent a chill down John's spine. He told himself it was nothing, just the stress of her job, or maybe excitement over the trip. But deep down, a seed of doubt had taken root. When Claire finally wheeled her suitcase to the door, pausing only to kiss him goodbye, John felt the emptiness settle into the house even before she left. The silence wasn't just absence, it was accusation. It wasn't until later, as he sat sipping coffee and staring blankly at his laptop, that the text came. An unknown number flashed on his screen, delivering a message that shattered whatever fragile piece he'd been clinging to. "Your wife isn't who you think she is. Check the guest list for the Palmer Hotel." The cryptic message burned into John's mind like acid, its implications too stark to dismiss. His fingers hovered over the delete button, trembling with the instinct to erase the intrusion from his life. Yet, something within him, an insidious whisper of doubt, prevented him from doing so. Instead, he found himself typing furiously into the search bar, navigating to the Palmer Hotel's website. His heart thudded against his ribs as he scrolled through the event listings, searching for any sign of Claire's name among the attendees. Each click felt like a step closer to a precipice he wasn't ready to face. When the results came back empty, John's stomach churned. No matches. None at all. He double-checked the spelling, triple-checked the dates, but the outcome remained unchanged. Panic began to creep in, mingling with anger and disbelief. How could this be? Claire had shown him the itinerary herself. Chicago Educators Summit, April 12th to 16th. But beneath the official entry, another line caught his eye. A&M Special Project. The initial struck him like a physical blow. A&M Adam Monroe, the new PE teacher at Claire's school. The man who had been spending an increasing amount of time with her lately, supposedly collaborating on some cross-curricular fitness initiative. Memories flooded back unbidden. Claire staying late at school more often than usual, her distracted demeanor during dinner, the way she would quickly lock her phone whenever he entered the room. At the time, he had brushed it off as work-related stress or creative exhaustion. Now, those moments coalesced into a sinister pattern. Was it possible she had been lying to him all along? The thought made his blood run cold. Desperation clawed at John as he moved to Claire's home office, telling himself he was merely looking for confirmation of the conference details. But once inside, his resolve wavered. The desk drawers yielded nothing incriminating, just lesson plans and student projects. But his gaze landed on a thick art textbook perched precariously on the shelf. Between its pages, a small scrap of paper peeked out, almost taunting him. With shaking hands, he pulled it free and unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakable. "Can't wait for our special getaway. You're my muse, my passion." The words hit him like a freight train, shattering the remnants of his trust. Adam's note confirmed what John had feared most. Claire had been having an affair. His knees buckled, and he sank to the floor, clutching the paper as if it might vanish if he let go. 10 years of marriage, of shared laughter, whispered promises, and quiet sacrifices, now reduced to betrayal. For a moment, the world around him blurred. He felt untethered, adrift in a sea of rage and despair. Then, slowly, clarity emerged. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or broken vows. It was about justice. Claire had dismantled their life together piece by piece, leaving him in the ruins without warning. If she thought she could walk away unscathed, she was wrong. John's jaw tightened as he rose to his feet, determination hardening his features. Revenge wouldn't just be sweet. It would be methodical, calculated, and unforgettable. John's mind raced as he replayed every interaction, every fleeting glance between Claire and Adam, searching for signs he might have missed. He remembered the way Claire's laughter had seemed brighter when Adam was around, how her voice softened when discussing their collaborative projects. What had once seemed like harmless camaraderie now felt like a performance, a carefully constructed facade designed to hide the truth. The realization stung worse than any physical wound. He hadn't just been betrayed romantically. He had been lied to repeatedly, manipulated into believing their marriage was intact while it crumbled behind closed doors. The emotional toll was suffocating. Anger surged through him in waves, followed by crushing sadness that left him gasping for air. Memories of their happiest moments, their wedding day, lazy Sunday mornings spent reading side by side, the quiet joy of building a life together, now felt tainted. Each recollection carried the bitter aftertaste of deception, forcing him to question whether any part of their relationship had been real. Had Claire ever truly loved him, or had she simply played the role of a devoted wife until someone else caught her eye? And yet, beneath the pain and fury, a deeper fear took root. If Claire could betray him so completely, what did that say about him? Was he not enough? Not worthy of loyalty or devotion? These questions gnawed at his self-worth, chipping away at the confidence he had once taken for granted. The man who had stood proudly beside Claire, secure in their bond, now felt exposed and vulnerable, stripped of the identity he had built within their marriage. But as the initial shock began to subside, something else emerged, a fierce resolve. John refused to let Claire's actions define him or reduce him to a victim. He owed it to himself to reclaim control, to ensure that she understood the magnitude of what she had done. Revenge wasn't just about retribution. It was about restoration, a chance to rebuild his sense of self-worth and assert his power in a situation where he had none. As he sat alone in the dim light of the living room, the crumpled note still clutched in his hand, John vowed to make Claire feel the same emptiness, the same abandonment, that she had inflicted upon him. Only then could he begin to heal. The silence of the house pressed heavily on John as he dialed Sarah's number, his trusted confidant and former student turned close friend. Her ability to read people had always been uncanny, and right now, John needed someone who could cut through the chaos in his mind. The phone rang twice before Sarah's warm, familiar voice answered, tinged with immediate concern. "John? What's wrong?" His breath hitched, and for a moment, he couldn't find the words. "Sarah," he finally managed, his voice cracking under the weight of everything he'd uncovered. "I need your help." Without hesitation, Sarah agreed to come over. 15 minutes later, her knock echoed through the house, pulling John from the haze of his thoughts. He opened the door to find her standing there, her sharp eyes instantly assessing his disheveled appearance. One look at his face, and she knew this wasn't a minor crisis. "What happened, John?" she asked, her tone gentle but firm as she stepped inside and wrapped him in a comforting hug. He clung to her briefly, drawing strength from her presence before pulling away. His hands trembled as he motioned for her to sit. "Claire, she's been cheating on me," he said, the words tasting foreign and bitter. "With Adam. I found a note. It's clear now. Everything I thought we had was a lie." Sarah's eyes widened, but she quickly masked her shock with empathy. "John, I'm so sorry. You don't deserve this." She paused, studying him closely. "Are you sure? Could there be any chance this is a misunderstanding?" He shook his head, his expression grim. "No. I've seen the signs for months. Her distance, the excuses, the secrecy. This confirms it." Pushing the crumpled note across the table, he watched as Sarah read it, her face darkening with each word. When she looked up, her voice was quiet but resolute. "This is bad, John. Really bad. But what are you going to do?" For a moment, John didn't answer. He stood and began pacing, his thoughts spiraling. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But I do know one thing. I'm not letting her walk away from this without consequences. She needs to understand what she's done. To us, to me." Sarah's brow furrowed. "What exactly are you thinking?" John stopped mid-step, his eyes locking onto hers. They were cold, resolute. "I'm going to make her feel invisible. Like she doesn't exist. She took everything from me, Sarah. My trust, my dignity, my future. Now I'm going to take something from her." The room fell silent as Sarah absorbed his words. She didn't agree with his plan. Not entirely. But she understood the depth of his pain. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about the destruction of everything John had built over a decade. The foundation of his life had been obliterated in a single moment, and now he was grasping for control in the only way he knew how. "John," she said softly, "I get why you feel this way. But don't let anger consume you. Don't lose yourself in this." He stared at her, his jaw tightening. "It's too late for that, Sarah. I've already lost myself. She took that from me. And now," his voice trailed off, but the unspoken promise hung heavy in the air. Claire would pay. Not with violence or confrontation, but with silence, absence, and the unbearable weight of being ignored. It was a punishment tailored to mirror the pain she had inflicted, and John intended to execute it with surgical precision. By the time Sarah left, John had already begun plotting his next moves. This wasn't going to be a simple confrontation or a dramatic showdown. Revenge, he decided, was best served cold and silent. He envisioned a scenario where Claire would feel the full weight of her choices, not through loud accusations or public humiliation, but through the deafening void of his absence. Every detail mattered, from the timing of his departure to the calculated indifference he would project. It was no longer enough to demand answers or explanations. He wanted her to experience the same isolation and invisibility she had imposed on him. The following morning, as Claire prepared to return from her supposed business trip, John put his plan into motion. He packed a small bag with essentials, ensuring he had everything he needed for a clean break. The kids were safely settled with Sarah for the weekend, giving him the space to execute his strategy without interruption. Before leaving, he silenced his phone, ignoring the barrage of calls and texts flooding in from Claire. Each unanswered ring and unread message was deliberate, a calculated strike designed to amplify her anxiety. Throughout the day, Claire's attempts to reach him grew, increasingly frantic. Her texts shifted from casual check-ins to desperate pleas. "Please talk to me, John," one read. Another begged, "Where are you? Why aren't you answering my calls?" John read them all, his lips curling into a bitter smile. These messages, once filled with affection and familiarity, now felt hollow and meaningless. He set his phone aside, savoring the irony of her desperation. She had dismissed him for months, treating him as an afterthought in their marriage. Now, it was her turn to feel abandoned. As evening approached, John stationed himself near the front door, waiting for Claire's arrival. The house was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that amplified every creak and groan of the floorboards. When her car finally pulled into the driveway, he watched through the window as she rushed inside, calling his name with mounting urgency. Her voice echoed through the hallway, high-pitched and panicked. "John, where are you?" He remained still, hidden in the shadows, letting the tension build. Only when she reached the living room did he finally speak, his voice low and cutting. You wanted to feel invisible, Claire. Now you can. I'm not answering your calls, your texts, or giving you any explanation. You're going to feel what I felt for the past few weeks. You're going to feel what it's like when the person you love most stops acknowledging you. Claire froze, her eyes wide with shock. John, please, no more apologies, he continued, his tone firm and unyielding. You made your choice. You can live with it. Tears welled in her eyes as she took a step back, her voice trembling. I didn't mean for this to happen. Please, just let me explain. But John was unmoved. He had given her countless chances to be honest, to repair what she had broken. Now it was too late. I've made up my mind, he said, his voice steady. You've ruined this marriage. There's no coming back from this. We're done. With those final words, he turned his back on her, leaving her standing alone in the silent house. The door slammed behind him as he walked out, her cries echoing in the empty space. Driving away, John felt a strange mixture of emptiness and satisfaction. He wasn't angry anymore. Not at Claire, not at Adam. He was done. But he was also relieved. The silence, the absence of her, felt like a weight lifted from his shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, he felt free. In the days that followed, Claire's frantic attempts to reach John only intensified. Her texts became torrents of desperation, each message more pleading than the last. Please, John, we need to talk. I can fix this. Just give me a chance. Her calls went unanswered, her voicemails piling up like unanswered prayers. She showed up at his workplace, pacing nervously outside his office until colleagues intervened, urging her to leave. Even Sarah, whom Claire cornered one afternoon, offered little solace. He's not ready, Sarah had said firmly, her loyalty unwavering. You'll have to respect that. Yet, for all her efforts, Claire's persistence only underscored the futility of her actions. The silence between them was deafening, a chasm that neither explanation nor apology could bridge. It wasn't just John's absence that tormented her. It was the knowledge that she had brought this upon herself. Every unanswered call, every ignored text, reinforced the reality of what she had lost. The man who had once been her anchor, her partner in life, was now unreachable, his silence a weapon sharper than any accusation. Weeks turned into months, and the strain began to show. Claire's once impeccable appearance deteriorated. Her hair lacked its usual luster. Her clothes hung loosely on her frame. Colleagues noticed her distracted demeanor, her inability to focus during meetings or engage in casual conversation. Rumors swirled about the sudden rift in her marriage, though few dared to ask directly. Even Adam, whose involvement had sparked the collapse, seemed to retreat from her orbit, perhaps sensing the storm he had helped unleash. Meanwhile, John embraced the solitude he had carved out for himself. Without the constant weight of betrayal pressing down on him, he found clarity in unexpected places. He poured his energy into his career, taking on challenging projects that demanded his full attention. He reconnected with old friends, rediscovering hobbies he had neglected during the years consumed by his marriage. Slowly but surely, he began to rebuild his identity, not as Claire's husband, but as John Harper, a man defined by his own choices and aspirations. Yet, even as he moved forward, John couldn't escape the lingering echoes of their shared past. Late at night, when the house was quiet and the world outside seemed to hold its breath, memories would surface unbidden. The laughter they had shared, the dreams they had built together, all of it haunted him, not with longing, but with a profound sense of loss. He had loved Claire deeply, trusted her implicitly, and now those emotions felt like relics of a life he no longer recognized. The betrayal had severed more than their relationship. It had fractured his faith in love itself. Still, John refused to dwell on regret. What was done, and dwelling on the past wouldn't change the present. Instead, he focused on the lessons he had learned, the importance of self-respect, the value of honesty, and the necessity of boundaries. He realized now that Claire's infidelity wasn't just a personal failing. It was a reflection of the cracks in their foundation, flaws he had ignored in favor of maintaining appearances. By confronting those truths, painful as they were, he had reclaimed a sense of agency over his life. One evening, as he sat on the porch watching the sunset, John received a message from Claire. She wanted to meet, to talk things through. For a moment, he considered responding, allowing himself to entertain the possibility of closure. But then he deleted the message without hesitation. Some battles, he realized, were better left unfinished. The war had already been won. Not through vengeance, but through liberation. The price had been steep, but the reward was invaluable. Control over his own destiny. As the sky darkened and the stars began to emerge, John felt a rare sense of peace. He had lost everything that once defined him, but in doing so, he had gained something far greater. He had become whole again, not because of Claire's absence, but because of his refusal to let her define him any longer. And in that moment, he knew he would never look back. Months passed, and John's life began to settle into a rhythm that felt both foreign and liberating. The sharp edges of betrayal had dulled, replaced by a quiet determination to redefine himself. He threw himself into his work with renewed vigor, earning recognition for his dedication and creativity. Projects that once felt mundane now sparked a sense of purpose, as if he were reclaiming pieces of himself he hadn't realized were missing. Outside of work, he rediscovered passions he'd long neglected, painting landscapes on weekends, hiking trails he'd never explored, and reconnecting with friends who reminded him of who he was before Claire. But it wasn't just external achievements that marked his transformation. Internally, John confronted the scars left by the betrayal. He journaled late at night, pouring his thoughts onto paper in an effort to process the whirlwind of emotions that still surfaced unexpectedly. Writing became cathartic, a way to untangle the threads of anger, grief, and eventual acceptance. He sought therapy, too, sitting across from a compassionate counselor who helped him navigate the labyrinth of his feelings. Together, they unpacked the insecurities that had festered during his marriage, the fears of inadequacy that Claire's actions had magnified. Through these sessions, John began to see his worth not as something tied to another person's validation, but as an intrinsic part of who he was. Revenge, he realized, hadn't been about destroying Claire. It had been about reclaiming his autonomy. The silence he had wielded so deliberately wasn't just a punishment. It was a declaration of independence. By refusing to engage, by choosing to walk away, he had taken back the power she had unwittingly handed over. And while the act of revenge had initially been fueled by bitterness, it evolved into something far more meaningful, a catalyst for growth. John no longer saw himself as a victim. Instead, he viewed the ordeal as a crucible, a trial that had forged him into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient. One crisp autumn morning, as John stood on a hilltop overlooking the city, he reflected on how far he had come. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but it no longer defined him. He had faced the worst version of himself, the man consumed by anger and despair, and emerged on the other side. In its place stood someone grounded, self-assured, and capable of moving forward without looking back. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. And as the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light over the horizon, John allowed himself a rare moment of pride. He had survived. More than that, he had thrived.